That led to, all told, 5,400 casualties. So let's not hope that it's so bad, but I think there's much more devastation, much more news to come, unfortunately.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And most of the pictures, as we've been saying, are coming from the capital, Caracas. The epicenter is 200 kilometers roughly away from the capital. Would it normally be the case that there is much more damage in the epicenter, or not necessarily?
It's more to do with the height. This was a relatively shallow earthquake at about 10 kilometers below the surface. And that means that the power, the explosion, was much closer to the buildings. So that's part of the reason why you see so much devastation from this earthquake. And of course, the city is the most populated area. So that's where there's going to be the most casualties, the most damage.
It's being called a documentary musical. The film Jail Time Records spotlights what the filmmakers claim is the very first recording studio inside a prison on the African continent. Shot over several years at the overcrowded Nouvelle prison in Cameroon, it's an impressive feat of filmmaking. It shows how music, through the recording studio, has become a powerful force within the jail.
My life for life.
Basically, the film follows the life of free artists. They gather around the
For co-director Steve Happy, who was himself incarcerated at one point in the prison, the recording studio and the music give the prisoners a sense of self-esteem and empowerment while behind bars.
For me, the beautiful thing about it, it's this instrument of resistance. It's this instrument where we can really record memories. It's this instrument where we can really record memories, where we can really share friendship, love, and our voices can be heard. Yeah, it's our instrument of resistance and even going through healing.
The documentary has won support from some influential figures in the film industry, including top New Zealand filmmaker Taika Waititi, who's impressed by what emanates from the prison recording studio.
The music that comes out of there is amazing, and I think just in terms of the power of art in relation to redemption and what that can mean to someone who some of these people are in prison for life. I think having an outlet is an incredibly powerful and humane thing.
While the recording studio has met with the approval of the prison authorities, not everyone might be happy with a film documenting a prison recording studio that could be seen as celebrating music that's come from hardened criminals. What do you say to people who are uncomfortable with that?
The process we're doing is a rehabilitation process. Basically, we enter the prison without any judgment, and it's the only way we can really approach this kind of work. And also, music, as any creative, accepting or coming to terms with things you've done and hopefully changing for the better.
This month, the team behind Jail Time Records brought their film to New York City for its world premiere at the Tribeca Festival. It picked up 3 awards, including one for Best Documentary Feature. So now the film is very much on an upward trajectory. And the hope for the filmmaking team is that the concept of having a recording studio walls of a prison will now spread to other countries and other institutions.
Our dream is for the project to expand to as many prisons as possible, to manage to collaborate with other organizations, local organizations in any country really, to kind of build as many studios as possible and kind of create this opportunity for more and more people.
As one their documentary to reach audiences, including inmates at the New Bell prison in Cameroon, where the film was shot. The jail was built to house just 800 prisoners, but now 6,000 live there. So this film will highlight not just the creative talents of these prisoners, but also the overcrowded conditions in which they live.
Hello. The record-breaking heat wave in Europe continues to dominate our world weather headlines. We'll get to that in a moment, but we start in North America with this cluster of heavy downpours and severe storms moving eastwards across the Midwest. Still the potential for some squally winds, large hail, possibly the odd tornado, some more showers breaking out towards the west, and some rather cool conditions for the western side of Canada, for the Pacific Northwest of the US. In Mexico, a lot of dry weather around, but with some afternoon thunderstorms. We will see some rain developing across parts of Central America, scattered showers there across the Caribbean. A fair bit of dry weather across much of Venezuela, just with 1 or 2 showers, but come a little bit further south through Colombia into parts of Ecuador. We will see some pretty heavy downpours of rain. Also still some cloud and rain for some far southeastern parts of Brazil. So into Europe, more hot sunshine in the forecast for Friday, but the very hottest of the weather is just starting to nudge its way eastwards. So temperatures dropping back a little bit, for example, across the western side of France, 36 degrees there in Bordeaux. But it starts to warm up in Berlin, 35 the high on Friday. Temperatures over the weekend could well hit 40 degrees Celsius in Berlin. A lot of dry and hot weather still across the north of Africa. Some showers and thunderstorms through central parts. Once again, the shower activity a little suppressed compared with what we might normally expect. Few showers across the western side of South Africa into some coastal parts of Namibia. Into the Middle East, it remains hot and dry for most. A little bit of patchy cloud, 44 degrees Celsius as the afternoon high in Riyadh. Into South Asia, the southwest monsoon is now moving its way a little bit further northwards, but most parts of India have seen less rain so far this monsoon season than they would normally expect. That said, there are some pretty heavy downpours in the forecast. We've got 2 different tropical storms converging on the south of Japan. Rain will be the main hazard. There could well be enough rain to cause some flooding. Also further really intense downpours across southern portions of China and into Taiwan. It's a story of scattered showers across many parts of Southeast Asia. Into Australia, low pressure swirling into the west. Some rain followed by some showers there in Perth and some brisk winds. And another area of low pressure continues to move to the northeast of New Zealand. That will continue to bring some hefty showers, some brisk winds and some rather cold air into the south.
This is frontier country.
Broaden your horizons.
If this is what being a 21st century nomad is all about, sign me up.
Caribbean's relationship with the seas are changing and deepen your understanding.
What must it have been like for them, not knowing whether they were going to make it? How important is this region?
If something starts changing here, we see the change all over the world.
This is just incredible.
The Travel Show on BBC News.
Știrile pot fi copleșitoare, derutante, sufocante. Dar nu aici. BBC News România oferă claritate. Analizele jurnaliștilor BBC aduc faptele în prim plan, oferindu-vă o înțelegere mai profundă a evenimentelor globale. Imparțial, aprofundat, în limba română. bbc.com/România, disponibil acum.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Devastation in Venezuela as at least 164 people are killed and up to 1,000 injured after two major earthquakes hit a minute apart. Frantic rescue efforts continue as voices are heard calling for help from under the rubble. Others have been trapped in the remains of apartment blocks. We'll have the latest on the rescue efforts and speak live to the IRC as more countries offer assistance. Our other headlines: the hottest June day record has again been broken in the UK as the intense heatwave continues to grip much of Western Europe. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, tells the BBC she's backing Andy Burnham for Prime Minister, even though he's expected to demote her. And down, but not quite out, Scotland's World Cup hopes are now hanging by a thread. Hello and welcome to BBC News. Let's return to that major breaking story because thousands of people are feared to have died after two massive back-to-back earthquakes hit Venezuela, the most powerful there for more than a century. Let me show you the live pictures coming into us from the capital, Caracas, where a state of emergency has already been declared. Now, the official death toll is 164, but that is expected to rise significantly. And the rescue efforts are continuing all of the while. These pictures, though, show the scale of the destruction near the coast, just north of Caracas. The UN says more than 100 buildings have collapsed. Let's start this hour with this report from Caroline Hawley.
This is the terrifying moment the disaster struck. Panicked passengers at the Simon Bolivar International Airport outside the capital, where part of the ceiling falls in. The two tremors came in quick succession, less than a minute apart. The second one, the strongest to hit Venezuela in over a century. It's a devastating blow to a country reeling from an economic crisis and political turmoil. In several states of northern Venezuela, buildings collapsed. This was filmed on the outskirts of the capital, Caracas. He wants to know what's happened to his mother. Yesterday was a national holiday. Many people were at home when just after 6 p.m. in the evening, everything began to shake. A man films as he flees his high-rise building, encountering more and more destruction as he goes. Responding to this will be a major challenge for the interim president, who's been running the country since her predecessor, Nicolás Maduro, was abducted by the US.
I must inform you that the hardest hit state by this unprecedented seismic event is the state of La Guaira. There are tens of collapsed buildings and we're working hard to save as many lives.
Offers of help are pouring in from around the region and beyond, but this is a country where many were already reliant on aid. We don't yet know the scale of this unfolding humanitarian crisis, but it's clear the needs are urgent.
Well, it's been quite shocking. We haven't seen anyone come to help the team. Up until this very moment, there hasn't been any heavy equipment or officials to assist us. It's been a pretty intense experience.
This map shows the epicenter and intensity of the first earthquake, which was immediately followed by the second. Many are still trapped under rubble, and everyone knows the death toll will rise. One international aid agency said its staff were witnessing devastation beyond belief. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Well, I was listening to a woman a little earlier describing what it's actually like. Sounds that buildings make as they begin to collapse, what it is like with the earth moving underneath you. Let me just show you some footage which gives you just a sense of exactly that. Well, there you can see the sights and sounds of the panic, the confusion in the moments, the instant as that quake hit, and then another quake hitting 38 seconds later. Now, Newman Vitoria lives in Caracas. He runs a news website. He described to me what happened when that quake hit, and his first instinct was to gather his family together.
So, you know, you don't know where to go, So, you know, you don't know where to go, where to run, because everything is moving. And something you don't think about is that walking is going to be really hard because it was the movements. You lose your balance. And then, well, my wife ran to downstairs to be together with my daughter. Then, I don't know, because in that moment, each second turns like, you know, like like an eternity. So we try to get together. We grab some emergency stuff, some basic stuff like smartphones or keys, and then we went downstairs.
I'll ask you what it was like in terms of what you saw, but just a quick follow-up in terms of what you've just said. Presumably,
well, we were trying to convince her to calm down. She was, of course, scared, and to get some clothes since she was taking a shower. Then we took her. We tried to calm everyone, you know, to keep calm, and then
to us of what it's like on the streets of Caracas now. So in terms of your story, you get outside. Take me through what you actually saw, the destruction around your particular area.
Well, we heard this. I guess it was this building very close, quite close to our building. It collapsed, so we heard a really loud noise. And what I was telling you, that you have these unexpected, I guess, appliances going loose. So it's a really unexpected kind of noise. It's too many noises at the same time.
An astonishing account of just how one family escaped from the quake. Let's take it in stages in terms of just looking at what has actually happened. Let's talk about the rescue efforts first of all, because is the rescues that are desperately with those people and the diggers looking for survivors under all of that rubble. It's been going on overnight and throughout the course of the day. Now, Britain, among many other countries, sending help to Venezuela, part of those international rescues. Now, Rob Norman is a station commander for West Midlands Fire Service. He's previously worked in post-earthquake search and rescue operations in Japan, in Haiti and in Morocco. And he described how they approach these rescues and the window of hope there actually is.
What we see in those pictures is that the buildings coming down, and whilst from the outside they look like they are totally flattened, what we would refer as a pancake collapse, what we know is due to the nature of the structure itself, we have what we call survivable voids. So the UK team, they are a highly specialised technical search and rescue team. They come with lots of equipment from listening devices, search cameras, and our role is to link into the local and national authorities and the other international teams that are responding and use that equipment to locate those people that are in those survivable voids. And that's where we get, as you referred to, those miracle rescues. Days.
And how many days perhaps potentially can people survive in situations like that?
To water, and they've lasted weeks. We have had that. And that, I think, for all of the rescuers and everybody involved in this response, it's about that possibility of hope, that there always remains hope. With the highly specialised teams and the great work that will be going on the ground, that there's always hope of those rescues.
Well, that's the rescue efforts. Let's turn to the aid situation. Let's speak to Kieran Donnelly from the International Rescue Committee's Crisis Response, Recovery and Development team. They already provide assistance in Venezuela and respond to earthquakes worldwide. Thank you.
What we're hearing from our team on the ground very much resonates with what your previous interviewee talked about, the sense of and in the places where they live. They've gathered this morning and they're launching an assessment effort to better understand the needs and how we can start responding to them. We work in Venezuela with a small team of our own staff, but we also have partnerships with local Venezuelan organizations, and we're in touch with their efforts. Of course, with airports closed and infrastructure disrupted, the very first effort is going to be by local communities and local organizations. And so we're determined to plug in and support their work as best we can.
What are likely to be the priorities, and how much of the hardware?
So our focus is going to be on helping people to meet their essential needs, less so on the search and rescue recovery work that we've just heard about. That's obviously the first priority, is getting people out. But you have many people who've lost their homes, who have nowhere safe to sleep, whose kids are exposed to the elements. And so finding shelter for them, making sure they have access to water, to healthcare where needed, to food. That's the very first priority in the days following an earthquake like this. But very quickly that transitions into, how do we help people to recover? How do we help people to start to build back from that? And in a context like Venezuela, where the baseline here is a country in which 8 million people were already living in need of humanitarian assistance, where political and economic challenges have given rise to severe restrictions on social services, coming weeks and months to help people recover.
And I'm going to touch on that with my next guest, but in terms of knowing the geography here, we're talking about, and are you getting any information from your colleagues in terms of the epicenter? We've seen a lot of pictures coming out of the capital. We haven't really got a real idea of what has happened in the epicenter, the extent of the destruction, the extent of casualties.
Yeah, we have limited information coming out of Guairo, the epicenter area. We don't have staff on the ground there. We have partners that we have worked with, and we're in touch with them, but it's very difficult, and that's typically the case in these kinds of situations. In the first 24 to 48 hours, we struggle to get real information. What we do know is that the numbers that we are seeing in terms of numbers of people killed, about 200 people reported killed so far, for example, are going to be a significant underestimate of the final toll of this. That information assess the affected areas and get in contact with those communities.
A final thought, these are early hours in all of this. Give me a rough idea of just how long the aid effort is going to have to stay in place, the international response to help Venezuela. And on a human level, give me an idea for your teams, what it's like to obviously worry their own safety and their family's safety, but carry out this absolutely crucial work.
So it's going to take weeks and months, and the timeline is going to depend on the level of investment and support. And we really need, we'll see a real partnership from governments around the region and from civil society organizations to support Venezuelan governments and communities. We very much welcome the US government's announcement of support earlier today. In terms of our teams, I mean, you really touched on the nub of it. These are colleagues who's had to literally evacuate their families from buildings that were shaking in the middle of the night. This morning, they showed up to work and went out to see how they help their communities. It's nothing short of heroic, and that's what we see replicated across the humanitarian.
Taking time to speak to us and give us the latest on what you know is happening there on the ground. We're grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk now about the challenges for the Venezuelan government. Let's talk to Dr. Christopher Sabatini, who's the director of the Latin American program at Chatham House. And thank you for being here with us. Just give me an idea, I know you know this country well, about the state of the infrastructure even before this.
Piled on top of a human disaster. The one-party state that basically was in power since 1999, but underinvested in infrastructure through corruption, through just malfeasance, through profligacy, in ways that basically collapsed the infrastructure. Roads, bridges, hospitals, and the electrical grid didn't receive the investment they needed. So now they're dealing with this situation without even, in some cases, the electrical infrastructure they need. That's been compounded also by climate change. Has been suffering from droughts. So this is a situation that is very ill-equipped to deal with this in terms of the infrastructure, but also institutionally. The government over the last 20 years has politicized the state, fragmented it. Response from policymakers are going to be very strained in terms of the local capacity to address this. So it's a dire situation made much worse because of a tragedy also of governance, if you will.
A twin thought then, because local journalists have been talking about a chaotic response. Is that natural given the events we have, or part of the explanation you've just given? And in terms of the economy, it's in absolute tatters. How much more difficult is that going to make the task ahead for Venezuela?
Well, let's talk first about what you just said. I think part of the response that we're seeing, the chaotic response, is just natural. Venezuela really hadn't had an earthquake since the 1960s. Of course, this is the worst earthquake in almost a century. So there's that. So there's not that capacity to respond naturally. But also, you've had a military that has been deeply politicized, which would typically be the first responder in these situations. Again, you've got infrastructure that's collapsing. This occurred also in a very mountainous region. If you go to Caracas, Caracas is in a valley, but on the hillsides surrounding Caracas are large numbers of favelas, very shabbily built homes that have been perched on this hillside. We haven't even seen the pictures of what happened there yet. I can imagine that's going to be a huge disaster. 5%. More than 8 million people, Venezuelans, left the country for a better life. They're not going to return anytime soon. But by the same token, even since the extraction by the U.S. Special Operations Forces of former President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, what we're seeing is a very slow process that is excessively focused on oil and gas recovery, which doesn't provide the level of benefits to the broader population that was necessary. We're seeing some increases in production. Most of that is because of foreign investors, but other areas of the economy that will need to be rebuilt, because we need to recognize, and I think your past reports mention this, development assistance across the board has been cut. There is no U.S. Agency for International Development. Much of this assistance will have to come from private investors. It cannot come from national financial institutions, because of a default, Venezuela is not a member of those, and the conditions for investment are simply not there in any legal, predictable sense.
Doctor, we have to leave it there. Great to talk to you. Great to have that analysis. Thank you so much for your time. Let me just take you briefly back to the live pictures from Caracas, those rescue efforts we were talking about only a few moments ago. They continue, and the piles of rubble. It is fascinating just looking at the scenes, because some buildings completely intact, others absolutely pancaked, as our rescue expert was talking us through a little earlier. So those, the pictures coming into us live from Caracas. Around the world and across the UK, you are watching BBC News. Welcome back. Plenty more from Venezuela coming up, but let's turn to the other big story, that heat wave that, of course, has spread across Western Europe. The UK has reached another record high June temperature. It is the second degrees Celsius recorded today in Merrifield in Somerset. England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland have all recorded their hottest days of the year so far. Well, it's a heat wave continuing across large parts of Western Europe. This is the live heat map in the last hour. We've also learnt that Switzerland has just recorded their hottest temperature for a June day, reaching 38 degrees. More than half of France has been under a red heat alert, with more warnings in place for parts of northern Spain and also Italy. Europe is apparently the fastest warming continent in the world. Data shows that Europe is heating up twice as fast as the global average. Well, let's get the latest from the south of France, from Antibes, and back to my colleague Pierre-Antoine Denis, who is there for. It was hot yesterday, even hotter today.
Yeah, absolutely, Matthew. Record temperatures in several parts of the country. We've just been hearing in the last 2 minutes or so from the weather agency Météo France saying that the average temperatures today are equaling the ones of yesterday, which would make of today the joint hottest average day on average here in France. So again, another record-breaking day, or record-equaling day, I must say, here in the country. And I've felt it myself. It's been considerably hotter here in my part of the world, in southern France. And as you've said, the fact that Switzerland has broken its record would mean that over the border with Switzerland, in these parts of France, we would have seen record temperatures as well. We're waiting for the official numbers. Now, the question here in the country is whether France is ready for this kind of heat in the. And she was telling me that hospitals, yes, are ready for an increase in patients for this heat wave, but not necessarily for the long term.
The hospital are not ready because there's no climatization in the bed of hospitalization. Most of emergency department have cooler. Let's say it's cooler.
Yeah.
But most of the hospital for hospitalization don't have. So we have difficulties to have beds which are cold enough to treat correctly the heat pathologies.
They're expecting in the next couple of days in Germany now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is because this heat dome that was sitting above France for the last few days now, starting in the western part of the country, moving its way through Paris into the north and now onto the eastern part of the country. We can see its movement, tracking it into Switzerland and into Germany, as you said, with record temperatures being expected tomorrow in the country. So it really goes to show what you were saying, Matthew, about how Europe is rapidly warming up at a rapid pace and quicker than the other continents. So it goes back to that question: are all of the countries here in Europe ready to face this new reality when heat waves are 5 times more likely now than they were at the turn of the century? Really big questions asked here for the government here at a European level as well, to try and find a European answer to this global problem.
Absolutely, Pierre-Antoine Denis. Thanks very much there in Antibes in the south of France. Plenty more on the website, the latest on those UK records, the latest from Europe, and all our teams monitoring what is happening. Let us end this part of the programme where we started it, Venezuela, Caracas. And these are the live pictures because those efforts continue. The diggers, the bulldozers being brought in because this is the scene in the capital. We haven't seen a huge amount of pictures from the epicentre. That's about 200 kilometres away. The fear is it is much worse there after those two earthquakes hitting in quick succession, 7.2, then 7.5, and that second quake having 3 times as much energy as the first. So the aftermath, that is what they're having to grapple with in these early hours, but that is likely to continue in the days, weeks and months ahead. You are watching BBC News.
That's been affecting Europe is going to start to edge its way eastwards. This chart shows temperatures compared with the average for the time of year. As we head into the weekend, we see the deep red colours spreading further east into the likes of Germany, Poland, out towards the west. Temperatures start to drop closer to where they really should be at this time of year. But as that process takes place, we will see some heavy showers and some thunderstorms breaking out. This is Friday afternoon. Some scattered showers there across Turkey. A lot of dry weather into Cyprus. 1 or 2 showers popping up for the Balkans and Greece, dry for much of Italy, but a few showers, maybe the odd thunderstorm through Portugal, northwestern Spain. 32 degrees in Madrid. It does start to cool off just a touch in the west of France, still up to 38 in Paris, but 39 in Frankfurt, and that heat will just continue to move its way further east as we head into the weekend. Out towards the west, where we see some showers, even some longer spells of rain starting to push into the Republic of Ireland, the north, all the way up at 40 degrees as the real core of that heat wave shifts further east. And actually in the west of Europe, London and Paris will turn markedly cooler as we head into the start of next week. In Berlin, well, a swelteringly hot weekend to come, but then it will turn more unsettled and quite a lot cooler.
For over a millennia, fermentation with fungi has been at the heart of Japanese cuisine. At Nomi, our goal is to achieve innovations in food systems that are proportional into delicious foods. Sapporo has been the ideal launchpad for growing a network where everyone can bring their best ideas to the table.
Not everyone is familiar with the idea that they have to manage forests. In Japan, making sure there are enough foresters is a real concern. Meanwhile, Indonesia has skilled young foresters. With Nosta, we want to bring them to Japan. The reason we chose Fukuoka is because we want to live here. Fukuoka City support goes beyond business. The city has been a key partner in bringing our dream to reality and helping our families make Japan our new home.
No one knows Asia like we do. DHL. Excellence. Simply delivered.
This is frontier country.
Broaden your horizons.
If this is what being a 21st century nomad is all about, sign me up.
Caribbean's relationship with the seas are changing and deepen your understanding.
What must it have been like for them, not knowing whether they were going to make it? How important is this region?
If something starts changing here, we see the change all over the world.
This is just incredible. The Travel Show on BBC News.
Now on BBC News, the biggest African and international news stories. Focus on Africa.
On Africa on BBC News, our top stories. Well, it's heavy police presence here in Kenya as demonstrators march 2 years since a deadly crackdown on youth-led protests against tax hikes.
I'm here to lay flowers in memory of my son. We came here to lay flowers in memory of our loved ones, but were shocked to find police blocking access.
And a new report reveals that Sudan's paramilitary group, the RSF, have acquired advanced anti-aircraft missiles despite international efforts to stop them.
This symbolizes and really highlights is that efforts to prevent the illicit acquisition of manpads have started to falter.
And also coming up in the program today, we look at Canada's trade policy shift with African countries and the impact it will have for nations here. And inside the high-risk operation powered by AI that helped separate these 3-year-old Nigerian conjoined twins. As always, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us. You're just in time for Focus on Africa. I'm Wahiga Mwaura. Well, we begin here in Kenya, where once again the Kenyan police have clashed with protesters who wanted to lay wreaths outside the country's parliament in the capital. Into the capital's central business district were sealed off. Families of victims, opposition leaders and activists continue to demand for justice and accountability for alleged police killings and forced disappearances and abductions linked to these protests. Well, the BBC's Akisa Wandera has been following this story and she filed the following report.
The central business district here in Nairobi today has been a ghost town. A lot of people have shut their businesses and chosen to stay away from the Nairobi CBD due to fears of unrest as Kenyans commemorate the second anniversary of the 2024 Gen Z protest that saw at least 60 people killed. We have seen families of victims of these protests make their way here saying they want to lay flowers to commemorate and celebrate the lives of their loved ones that was cut short during those protests.
I'm here to lay flowers in memory of my son, marking 2 years since his passing. We came here to lay flowers in memory of our loved ones, but were shocked to find police blocking access.
They're not just commemorating their lives, they're saying that they're still calling out for accountability for the way in which their loved ones' lives were cut short.
All the policemen who killed those kids, because they are known, I'm only asking for justice.
I want the government to give us justice. They are able.
We are telling the government compensation is not enough and they will not hoodwink us with money.
And protesters stormed this building as they protested or demonstrated against bad governance and the anti-finance bills.
That was the BBC's Akisa Wandera. Now, women have long faced sexual violence during protests around the world. But what impact does it have on their willingness to participate in protests? Now, Focus on Africa podcast host Nkechi Ogbona spoke to an anti-gender-based violence advocate who runs a safe shelter for survivors. She began by narrating her experience at anti-government protests last year.
So I did go for the protest, and then when I managed to leave because it became very violent, so when I managed to get out of town, I got out of town. And then that is, I'm on my way home. That is when now the calls started coming into the call center, as well as onto my number, as well as on my Twitter. You know, people were like, oh, this is happening. So I turned around.
And so, Njeri, at what point did you say, okay, look, there is a series of events, and this is beginning to look like it's a pattern?
Yeah, the one that really alarmed me was a young woman who called me. You know, those were a couple of people who had texted me on Twitter. And that's when I put out my number. And I said, in case anybody has been violated or needs help, kindly feel free to contact me. Okay. So because I put out after these 2 calls, I put out my number. That is when now people started calling in. Some had been harmed. Some of them had not been sexually violated, but they had been roughed up in terms of, being groped, having, fingers inserted. And most of these cases, we had to deal with them the next day.
How many women reached out to you? Do you have a rough number of the number of women who actually reached out to you to say, I am being violated, I need help, please come?
The women that we assisted during that period were about 10.
10 women?
10 women.
It's been 1 year now since these attacks on these 10 women. On these 10 women who came forward now. How are they faring?
I called one of them and I wanted to come with her. And I asked her, would you be willing on anonymity? They don't have to show your face, or they can even
blur you out.
What I do. But when somebody tells you something like that, then you realize that we don't want to feel. I'd rather be numb and never go back and revisit what happened to me. And it makes sense. And you want to tell me somebody like that will ever go to a protest? If you look at protests, less and less women, actually virtually, women are not showing up for these kind of protests. They did show up for the last protest for femicide, but anything outside of that, I don't think women are going to be. Outside of that, I don't think women are going to be willing to ever show up again. And that is how you know they killed a movement, by ensuring that women will not show up.
And you can listen to that full conversation tomorrow on the Focus on Africa podcast and watch it on YouTube this Saturday on the BBC News Africa channel. All right. Now, for more on this, sexual exploitation and gender-based violence may be discouraging women from taking part in protests.
Well, there are concerns about that because, as you can even see in our reparation program, there is an amount of money that we are giving for any sexual violence, because it happens when there are situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. So that is something that has been witnessed before, and there are people who have come out to claim, although they are not majority, although they are not majority. If you look at our statistics, they are not really as many as they are. But then, yes, it's a concern, and especially because also of late we have dealt with the issues of femicide and sexual harassment. But yeah, not necessarily as major as it is anticipated.
Some of those who've been helping provide support to survivors of sexual violence say some of the cases go unreported because they feel that they will not get the support at police stations. Survivors don't feel heard. Are you doing enough to support victims of sexual violence as government?
One of the things that we have done, of course, is, we have had the task force that has made recommendations. It is awaiting cabinet approval. It's already gone to the cabinet committee. It had a very robust debate. And the cabinet is meeting, if nothing changes, on next week on Tuesday, on 30th, and it could be one of the agendas to be discussed. And so we wait until cabinet.
We saw some women, mothers of people who lost their lives in protest, gathered in the CBD this morning. Some of them said no compensation has been offered to them. They haven't received calls from anyone to let them know that they'll be compensated. What does that mean? Because you're saying compensation is ongoing, but some of these families are saying no one's talking to us.
First and foremost, we offer most sincere condolences, and we stand with them in solidarity. There is a process. We have actually a pack of frequently asked questions on the same. My office is more than willing to share that. They can actually adduce their, evidence or petition orally. They don't even need to write, because we recognize some of them may not be in that capacity. Let them approach the panel. We have those guidelines, or the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, the Ministry of Interior, it's across the country. Let them make a claim across the country. Let them make a claim. As I told you, we have had nearly 3,000 claims. Let's have their claims as well, and the government will do the needful.
How far along is the government in the prosecution of suspects who carried out these acts?
The president put it very clearly, and this is the position of the government, that this process is to repair relationship. It's restorative justice as our African way of doing things. But then it does not do away, it does not vitiate liability on the part of any alleged perpetrator. So the process of criminal law will be judiciary. And that is why Wahiga Mwaura, we leave it to that so that the due process of the law must apply.
All right, let's switch gears now and take you to Sudan now, where a new report by the Small Arms Survey says that the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces have acquired an arsenal of missiles that are easily portable, known as MANPADS. Military and civilian aviation. The RSF is the first such group known to have obtained defense systems which were previously unseen outside of state control. Now, according to the report, since the war began in April 2023, the RSF has acquired at least 8 different models of these portable missiles, 5 of which are quite advanced. This is more than any other non-state armed group within the Middle East and the North Africa region. The report comes as fighting escalates in Sudan's central town of El Obeid.
Our OCHA colleagues warned that ongoing fighting continues to endanger civilians and damage civilian infrastructure in El Obeid, the capital of North Kordofan state. Yesterday, our partners reported that a drone strike hit an
illicit retransfers by states or illicit retransfers by states or has occurred when there's been catastrophic regime collapse or opportunities for armed groups and others to loot depots. That's when we see the most proliferation.
Has there been a response from the RSF to your findings? What are they saying?
No, we haven't heard from the RSF.
But then how did you get access to these findings?
This is all based on open source imagery. There are thousands and thousands of images and clips of video that are posted every day from all over the world showing weapons and ammunition. And so hundreds and hundreds of these images posted by the RSF, posted by